All right, guys, Mr. March, and we're back with Act 2, Scene 1 of A Midsummer Night's Dream. In this video, we're going to break up, even though it's still one scene, we're going to break it up into two different videos because it's as if there are two very separate stories unfolding in one scene here. So, in Act 1, Scene 1, we met the four lovers, we met the Dons, we met crazy old Aegeus who wants to kill his daughter. In 1.2, we met the six workers. We saw kind of that power struggle with Bottom and Quince. And now we're going to meet the third group of characters. If you were to break this play up, you would break it up into, the four lovers, the workers, and the magic fairies. All three of those groups kind of just swirling around in a universe that centers on Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. So now we're going to get our first experience with the fairies. And the first thing that you need to know about the fairies is that Oberon and Titania are the king and queen. Fairies typically in this world live and exist in the forest. They have magic powers. We don't know the extent of them. We do know that they have invisibility. We know that they can cast spells. I don't know. I mean, I can't really get too far into the weeds with it, but we'll talk about the stuff that we see as we go along. Just suffice it to say, they have some magic powers, and they're also prone to mischief. The fairies enjoy a good practical joke. And out of this list of fairies here, the only three that you need to know are Oberon, Goodfellow, also known as Puck. Oberon's the king, Titania's the queen, and Robin is like Oberon's right-hand man. Like, that's his number two. There's a bunch of other fairies that you're going to meet somewhere along the way. They're kind of like Titania's servants, but they play really minor roles. They're fairly insignificant. You don't need to remember their names. Kind of like the other four workers. You don't need to know who Peas Blossom, Cobweb, Moat, and Mustard Seed are. Last thing to cover before we get into the narrative is that fundamentally it's understood that Oberon and Titania are good-natured. They might like a practical joke, but at the end of the day, they don't want to hurt people. They don't want to use their power for evil. Maybe just a little laugh, and then, fundamentally they're good. Robin is a little bit more ambiguous. We don't know exactly where he stands. He's kind of one of those characters where it's like, this might be a bad guy. I don't know if I'm rooting for him. We don't know for sure, but it's always out there. The question kind of lingers. So, Act 2, Scene 1 starts off with Robin seeing another fairy in the woods. And he's like, yo, fairy, what's going on? And, this fairy's just kind of like doing this sing-songy thing. Over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar. It's just kind of like a sing-songy version, but eventually that fairy's point is like, well, I'm just out here looking for good stuff for the queen. I'm with the queen. And Robin's like, yo, the king's staying in this forest tonight, so you better tell the queen to get up out his face. He is still mad about that Indian boy that she took from him. And it's just a brief thing to say that at its core, the king and the queen are beefing right now. They have been for months, and what it comes down to is that there was a little Indian boy that both of them wanted. It doesn't quite make sense because they're married, they're the king and the queen, but both of them want primary custody of this little boy. The queen, Titania, wants custody of the little boy because she was good friends with the little boy's mother, and the mother died giving birth to this child. The king wants this little Indian boy because he thinks he would be the perfect fairy in training. Like, he thinks he would be a great henchman, a good number two to replace Robin someday. And so he wants to train him, in whatever dark arts those are. So they're fighting over the kid. Titania has the kid, and she won't give him up to Oberon. And they've been fighting for months over this. So this is husband and wife who still love each other, but they are in a massive fight. And they haven't seen each other in a while, and so Robin's like, yo, the king's staying here tonight. Please tell his wife to stay away. Tell her to be gone. And the fairy's like, wait, you're speaking on behalf of the king. Does that mean, are you Robin Goodfellow? It's like, wait, Robin Goodfellow, we heard about you. Your pranks are legendary, man. And the fairy's like, uh, there's this one line that kind of speaks to like, is he a little evil? And it said that, where is it? Line 40. Sometime make them drink to bear no barm. Mislead night wanderers laughing at their harm. Right? Like, the nature of a prank is that it's all in good fun. So laughing at their harm, it's like, yo, are you that fairy that like does some real evil, dirty pranks? And he's so proud. He's like, yeah, that's right, you heard right, that's me, that's Puck, yes. And he just kind of goes off. He's like, I'm the king's number 2. He loves my pranks. One time, I pretended to be a horse. And so I went up by this other horse, and I started making horse noises. And then the horse looked around because it was expecting to see another horse. And then I disappeared, and it just looked around confused, and we laughed at that horse. And then another time, there's this lady, and she was sitting there, and she was eating crab soup. And she got the bowl of crab soup, and she picks it up, and she puts it to her lips. And right when she put it to her lips, I became the crab, and I bit her lips, and she poured it all over her lap. And we laughed at her again. It was hilarious. And then another time, there was this sad old lady telling some sad old story to a bunch of people. And in the middle of her story, she went to sit down on a stool, and I became the stool, and I fell out, and she fell on her butt, and everybody laughed at her. It was the best. I do the number 1 pranks. And Fairy's like, oh, cool, man. Cool. Yeah, you're a legend. Yeah, we heard about you. But here comes the queen. So, you and the king should be on your way. And he's like, nah, the king's coming now. And then you kind of get like, almost like if you read The Outsiders or saw it like a Greasers and Socs kind of thing, you know what I mean? Where like the 2 gangs are walking up on each other. And also, just unrelated, but always funny to me. If you've ever seen The Outsiders, what you'll probably notice is that everybody except Ponyboy later became famous. Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze, Emilio Estevez, Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon, and then even the Karate Kid. And then this guy literally never did anything again. So, stay gold, Ponyboy. Another thing that you might liken it to would be kind of like the square off and beat it. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Michael Jackson. I mean, you should. Here's a little 15-second clip. So you got this vision of the 2 groups getting together, and like we said, they haven't seen each other in months, and it's kind of got like an East Coast, West Coast vibe where like you can feel the tension as they both walk in from different directions. So they get there, and Oberon just looks at her, and his first line is, ill met by moonlight, proud Titania, where he's like, he's just like, ugh, fancy seeing you here. And they immediately start fighting. She's like, what, jealous Oberon? Fairies, skip hence. Ladies, let's get out of here. I've forsworn his bed and company. She's like, we're fighting. I'm not dealing with this. Ladies, let's get out of here. And she goes to get her fairies and get out of here. And Oberon says, tarry, rash wanton, am not I thy lord? Which every responsible grown-up I've talked to about this is like, you shouldn't say this. But how I think this best translates to contemporary language is essentially Oberon's like, what, lady? You forget who daddy is? And she essentially is like, she's like, yeah, you're right. I'm your lady. I know. But what about, and she goes right in on him, right? Like, she's like, oh yeah? What about amorous Phillida? I heard you were messing around with her. And what are you doing here? Because I know you were messing around with Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Right? Like, she goes straight into him, just accuses him of cheating or flirting with other women. And Oberon shoots right back. He's like, how are you going to front on that? Everyone knows about you and Theseus. Everybody knows that's why you're here. And so it's worth stopping for just a moment. There's, outside of the little Indian boy, there is legitimate beef and jealousy between husband and wife here. What is never clear to us is whether these are imagined jealousies or if there's a reason for them, whether they're cheating on each other, whether there's actual infidelity going on here. And I think it's also interesting that, this husband and wife are accusing each other of messing around with the husband and wife to be, right? Duke Theseus and Queen Hippolyta. It's never super clear. I think he leaves it ambiguous purposefully, just my amateur opinion. But it is also, if you remember back to the first video, it's an allusion. It alludes to the another aspect of Greek mythology, which is that the gods and goddesses often had sexual relationships with mere mortal humans. And so there is this kind of tension of, did it happen, or are they just kind of being jealous of each other? We don't really know. Either way about it, Titania then goes into a very long monologue. It contains a ton of imagery about weather that we really won't go into. It would be worth a deep dive to look at all of the imagery in this long monologue, but we're just going to skip it for right now. The essence of the monologue is Titania's like, hey, I guess I should say this as well. One of the other things about the fairies, one of their magic powers, is that their moods can affect the weather worldwide. Like, they have that kind of power. Also reminiscent of various Greek gods and goddesses. So you kind of see this thing where Titania is like, hey, we're responsible. We're screwing up the weather and we're messing up people's lives. We have mortals who have lost an entire season's worth of crops because we've been fighting for months and it's messing things up for them. So, I don't know. Yeah, so Titania she goes on like this 5-minute rant, right? It's almost like if you get sent like a 5-page text and just respond with one sentence. Oberon essentially responds with one sentence. He's just like, okay, cool. You gonna give me the boy? And she's like, no, forget it. You're not getting the boy. Remember, I was best friends with that boy's mother, whatever. Oberon's just like, yeah, I mean, we could make up. Are you gonna give me the boy? And Titania's just like, you are useless. You are a one-track record. We're gonna fight if this keeps up. Ladies, and she gets her posse, and she's like, we're out of here. And they bounce. And we will come back for part 2, where Oberon has his first encounter with mere mortals. So we'll pick that up on the next video.